It's right there.
Straight across?
Yeah, that's some swamp there.
Balls. You're a chainsaw over there? You're something.
Someone's over there, man, for sure.
A full decade. That's how long Parker Schnabel has been working the Klondike. Not one single claim, but the same broader region, expanding, scaling back, shifting strategies, constantly evolving his operation. Over 10 years of bold decisions, sharp instincts, and sometimes risky calls, he's pulled more gold out of that ground than any independent miner featured on Gold Rush. But here's the twist. It was always the same geological system. The same land Parker grew up learning, reading, and mastering since he stepped in to run his grandfather's business as a teenager, and immediately started outperforming miners twice his age. 10 years of experience. 10 years of understanding that ground better than almost anyone alive. And yet, 120 feet below a section he'd already mined, multiple times, with nothing extraordinary to show for it, sat a massive gold deposit worth around $450 million. Not hidden by some rare geological anomaly, not buried behind complex formations, not even something that required years of advanced modeling to uncover. It was hidden by a single assumption, an assumption that made perfect sense, one backed by data, reinforced by regional geology, and confirmed by years of consistent results. It aligned with everything experts believed about that land. Questioning it never even seemed necessary. But it was wrong. That gold had been there from the very beginning. It was there during every season Parker worked nearby. It was there while he built his reputation as one of the sharpest miners in the Klondike. It took 10 years, a leap in technology, and one geologist asking the right uncomfortable question to finally uncover it. If you're into stories like this, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because what Parker just discovered beneath ground, he thought he fully understood, might be one of the most unbelievable moments in Gold Rush history. Now, here's what makes this even more fascinating. Parker's knowledge of that land isn't surface level. He doesn't just read reports and act on them. He's physically moved millions of yards of earth over 10 seasons. He's seen how the ground reacts, how pay streaks shift, where they narrow, and where they disappear. He knows which areas reward aggressive mining, and which ones resist no matter how hard you push. This isn't guesswork, it's experience. Real, hands-on learning built through trial, failure, adjustment, and eventual success. The kind of knowledge that becomes instinct. That instinct is what made him so effective. Season after season, he outperformed more experienced operators. He could read a cut-and-shift strategy before the data even confirmed what he already sensed. He optimized his entire operation around how his ground behaved, not some generic mining playbook. But there's a catch. Experience builds knowledge, and also limits it. Every miner develops a mental model, a framework that explains what's in the ground and where to find it. It's what turns raw experience into actionable decisions. But every framework has edges, points where direct knowledge ends, and assumptions begin. For Parker, that edge was depth. The ground he'd been mining had a known productive zone, a specific depth range where gold consistently showed up. Surveys supported it. Years of production confirmed it. And below that, according to standard geological thinking, nothing worth chasing. Gold concentrations were believed to drop off beyond that zone. It wasn't just a theory, it was accepted as fact across the region. So, Parker treated it like fact, for 10 years. And technically, it wasn't bad reasoning. The problem wasn't logic, it was the limits of the information available at the time. Then came Season 10, and everything changed. A new generation of deep-penetrating, ground-penetrating radar entered the picture. Originally designed for large-scale infrastructure and advanced mineral exploration, this tech could see deeper and with more clarity than anything Parker's team had ever used. He didn't bring it in to find something new. He brought it in to better map what he already knew was there, to mine more efficiently. That was the plan, to refine, not to rediscover. The specialist operating the system wasn't part of his usual team, a geologist experienced specifically with this advanced radar. She ran the standard survey exactly as requested, mapped the known productive zone, delivered the improved data Parker expected. And then, she kept going. She didn't stop at the known zone. Instead, she pushed the analysis deeper. Well below the layer, Parker's entire operation had always considered the cutoff point. Into territory the regional geology had long labeled as not worth the effort. And that's where she saw it, something that didn't fit. When she brought it to Parker Schnabel, it became the moment that shattered a decade-long belief. "I want to show you something," she said. "It's below your productive zone." Parker leaned in, eyes fixed on the display. The depth range alone was enough to raise doubts. This was ground he'd always dismissed. But the anomaly, that was different. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "That's exactly the problem," she replied. "This doesn't match what we're supposed to see down here. The density, the spread, the structure, it all points to a concentration, not dead ground." "Below 100 feet, Parker said quietly. Not a question, more like his instincts trying to hold on to what he'd always believed. "Closer to 115 to 125 feet, she confirmed. "Below anything your team has targeted." Now he had a conflict. 10 years of hands-on experience told him one story. The data in front of him was telling another. "What do you think it is?" he asked. She chose her words carefully. "If this interpretation holds, we could be looking at a deep lead, an ancient deposit buried beneath everything you've been mining. If that's true, it means the regional model for this area is incomplete." Parker didn't respond right away. He just stared at the screen. Then he asked the only question that mattered. "How do we prove it?" "We drill. A direct borehole, straight down to 120 feet. No guesswork, just a camera and core samples to see exactly what the radar had picked up." And Parker didn't hesitate. No long meetings, no weeks of over-analysis. He gave the green light that same day. Because that's how he operates. When the potential upside is massive and the cost of finding out is reasonable, he moves. The drill started the next morning. It took about 18 hours to reach 120 feet. Parker stayed on site as they approached the final stretch, the exact zone where the anomaly had appeared. At around 112 feet, the first change showed up. The drill cores looked different, older. The structure shifted, showing clear signs of water deposition, layering that didn't match the ground above. The geologist examined it immediately. "This is fluvial material," she said. "Ancient river sediment. This shouldn't be here, not at this depth." "What does it mean?" Parker asked. "It supports the theory," she said. "A buried river system, older than everything sitting on top of it. Something the current geological model never accounted for." Then it got even more interesting. At 118 feet, the sediment became tighter, denser, more refined. The kind of natural sorting that happens when water carries and concentrates heavy materials, like gold. And then, at 120 feet, the drill hit it. Not solid rock resistance, not loose overburden, but that unmistakable dense, compact feel. Sediment packed over time, trapping heavy particles. The exact signature of a gold-rich zone. The core samples were rushed straight to testing. Parker stood there as the analysis was done. The geologist looked up. "Parker," she said, holding her composure, "this isn't low grade. It's not borderline." She paused. "This is rich, very rich." He took the sample, turning it over in his hands. 10 years. 10 years of mining above this exact spot. Every cut, every load, every ounce of gold pulled from the layers above, while something far more valuable sat just out of reach, because no one had ever gone deep enough. "How big is it?" he asked. "That's what we need to map next," she said. "But from what the radar shows, this isn't a narrow streak." She looked at him. "This is a field." "Not just a pay streak?" he asked. "A field." Parker set the sample down slowly. 120 feet. A full decade. All that gold. Sitting there the entire time, hidden beneath an assumption no one had questioned. "Run a full survey," he said. "Everything. I want complete coverage across the claim." What followed was intense. 5 days of expanded scanning, 3 more days of analysis. 8 days total, from discovery to full understanding. And what they uncovered wasn't just promising, it was massive. The buried channel system stretched across a large portion of his claims. Not perfectly uniform, but widespread enough to completely change the value of the ground. The estimate? around $450 million. And this wasn't a rough guess. It was built from detailed surveys, core samples, and modeling, then double-checked by independent experts. 2 separate geological consultants reviewed everything. Both came back with the same conclusion. The deposit was real, the numbers held up, and if anything, the estimate was conservative. So, how did Parker react? Exactly how you'd expect if you've watched Gold Rush. He didn't celebrate. He didn't dwell on the fact that this had been sitting beneath him for 10 years. He didn't get stuck thinking about what could have been. He moved straight to the next step, planning how to get it out of the ground. All that time, the gold was sitting there, untouched, while his crew worked layer after layer above it. And when the truth finally came out, Parker Schnabel didn't stop to think about legacy, reputation, or how this would rank him among other Klondike operators. He focused on one thing: how do we get it out? Because at the end of the day, the gold was real, and the only question that mattered was how to extract it efficiently, safely, and profitably. That's exactly the kind of problem Parker has spent 10 years training himself to solve. But this wasn't a simple dig. The upper layers of the claim had already been heavily worked. 10 seasons of excavation had left behind unstable ground, voids, and collapsed sections. The surface was no longer clean or predictable. Reaching that deep ancient channel without damaging it, or putting the operation at risk, required a completely different strategy. So, Parker teamed up with his engineers and geologists to design a new access plan, one that could navigate the disturbed upper ground while preserving the integrity of what lay beneath. It was more complex than standard Klondike mining, more technical, and definitely more expensive per yard. But when you're looking at a deposit worth around $450 million, the math still works in your favor. Even with higher costs, the margins were massive, especially since Parker already owned the land, the equipment, and had a seasoned crew ready to go. The season that followed didn't feel like any other. Not because it was faster. Parker's always been about efficiency, not speed, but because of the depth and the level of precision required. This wasn't just another cut. This was a newly discovered, historically significant deposit. And Parker treated it accordingly, not emotionally, not sentimentally, but with focus, with discipline, with the kind of attention to detail that only comes from years of understanding how your ground behaves. The gold that came out wasn't just gold. It was ancient, formed in a river system that existed long before the current landscape of the Klondike even took shape, concentrated over time by natural water flow, then buried under 120 feet of geological history, preserved, waiting, and now, finally, recovered. By the end of the season, the numbers told the full story. About 180,000 ounces of gold, roughly $450 million in total value. After all costs, including the more expensive extraction methods, the net profit came in at around $200 million. From ground he'd already been mining for a decade, from a depth he'd never had a reason to question. It makes you think. Parker's grandfather, John Schnabel, had worked that same region, built his legacy there with the tools and knowledge available at the time. Parker carried that legacy forward and expanded it. But even between the two of them, neither knew what was sitting beneath. There's a saying John used to repeat: "The Klondike keeps its best secrets the longest." Turns out, he was right. Because this story isn't really about luck. It's not just about being in the right place at the right time, or randomly using new technology and getting lucky. This is about what 10 years of relentless, disciplined work actually builds. Not just production, but understanding. The kind of understanding that lets you recognize something unusual when it finally appears. The geologist spotted the anomaly, Parker trusted it, and acted immediately. Both decisions mattered. Take either one away, and that gold stays buried. And without those 10 years of experience, Parker might not have even been in a position to notice it in the first place. Yes, the assumption about depth was wrong. The idea that deeper means uneconomical didn't hold true here, but those 10 years weren't wasted. They built everything needed to turn that discovery into reality. The operation, the knowledge, the confidence to act. The gold sat at 120 feet for a decade, and it took that same decade for Parker to be ready to find it. Because some discoveries don't just happen, they wait, and sometimes You have to build the moment that uncovers them. The deeper they went, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a lucky pocket. The consistency of the gold confirmed they were inside something far bigger than a one-time strike. It reinforced the idea that the Klondike still has layers no one fully understands. And that realization changes how Parker will mine moving forward. Because now, every finished section of ground becomes a question mark. Every assumption gets tested, and every foot deeper might be hiding something just as big.